Hello, I am Jennifer Potter and I am the founder of Frankly. And our mission is a small and mighty one to help leaders do the impossible, to help them balance people with planet and profit, and to be able to do that without losing their mind, health, or sense of humor in the process. And in this short video, I'm going to introduce you to the Frankly Leader Framework. And the framework we have designed the framework from years of research, listening to clients, and also investigating the future that's coming to kind of put together a roadmap, if you like, and not necessarily for how to navigate the future, because nobody knows how to do that at the moment, but certainly to put a kind of framework in place about the skills and the resources that it is good to have in place that's going to help you navigate the future that's coming. So the framework is intended as an audit tool. It's intended to help you to figure out, either as an individual leader, how you're doing and where are your strengths and where might you need to power up and get some extra support and some resource. And it's also useful at an organizational level to look at your leadership community. So you may be able to pinpoint that we're really good in 3 or 4 areas, but there's a couple that actually you've either never looked at because you never realized that they were important, or that they just keep falling off the radar. So this is hopefully a tool that will help you to prioritize your resources, prioritize your investment, and prioritize how to put the right scaffolding in place to support your leaders to be the best leaders that they can be. So let's dive in without further ado. So I'm not going to go through all these slides, but just some of them. And if you want a deep dive, just to say, I do a 1-hour webinar on this every other month. So do keep your eye on my LinkedIn profile to get details of that. But just to say, why does this matter now? And what is that future that's coming? You know, I'm particularly interested in climate, the breakdown of our climate, the collapse of our climate and sustainability, and how we're going to have to adapt and innovate in order to meet the way that we were going to live in the not too distant future. But I'm also interested in how technology advancements sit alongside that and innovation and disruption. But what does that mean on a human level? So we're looking at this through the lens of leaders, and leaders are having to take their people on a journey with them through a very complex macro environment. So what's happening on a global scale. So typically a while ago, we used to use the term VUCA, and we used to talk about it being volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And that's the environment that we're trying to operate in. Now, the elements of VUCA are actually, there are things that you can put in place to help yourself navigate through there. And a futurologist has basically said, VUCA is done. You know, we're beyond the VUCA phase now. We're in what he's calling the Barney phase. And that is that it is brittle, it's anxiety inducing, it is non-linear. So A plus B doesn't always equal C. And it is largely incomprehensible for most of us to process in our brains. So that obviously creates a bit of a hot pot of an environment. And most work environments, even if you've got the calmest, most loveliest work environment, the individuals that work within your environment are experiencing this in terms of how they find themselves and how they locate themselves in the bigger world. So that's just a bit of context to kind of put some extra flesh to, you know, why is it important that we start to look at the way that we're leading, and whether the way that we've always led is the way that we need to lead moving forward. So Cassio is the chap that came up with the Barney. So so the framework is designed for organizations that want to thrive. So if you are an organization that doesn't want to thrive, you might want to hit the pause button or the stop button right now, but I can't imagine any organizations out there that would. And essentially for me, I think an organization that wants to thrive needs to be thinking about 3 things: attracting and retaining really good talent. And retaining is the key word here. I think we have been focusing too much on attracting and not enough on retaining for years. And I think now we're paying the price of that, particularly in the UK. The second is knowing what ingredients and what levers in your organization and your industry create a healthy profit through healthy performance. So how do you mobilize performance in order to produce profit? A healthy business does need profit. The key word here is healthy. Profit and performance are almost assumed, but there's a way of achieving profit and performance. And we're really keen that organizations start thinking, what's a healthy way of doing that? And then the third and final one that we think you need to have in place in order to create an organization that thrives is legacy beyond profit. Now, what we're starting to see at the moment, particularly as we move into the future where sustainability and climate change is becoming a much bigger topic. I mean, it's almost starting to become entrenched in our everyday life. What we're starting to see is that organisations that are really thriving are those organisations that are thinking beyond profit. So sure, they're profitable, but they're also thinking, actually, how can we have a positive impact? And certainly when you marry that to the first objective here about attracting and retaining talent, the younger talent in particular want to work somewhere in an organization that are looking to do positive and to do good in the world as well. So that legacy beyond profit becomes even more important. So you might say, well, if they're the three things I need to have my eye on at a company level, how does that translate into a framework? So here's the leader framework, and we like to keep things simple. So there are 3 pillars and 9 priorities. So the 3 pillars, and again, this is specifically looking at what the leaders need. So that could be anyone from the CEO, the business owner, the founder, right through to first-time line manager. So we like to look at this through 3 pillars, and the pillars are me, so authentic leader, we, empowered teams, and all of us, a purposeful organization. And there are 3 priorities for each of these. So 3 things that you kind of like skills you need to have in your toolkit, in your rucksack, that will enable you to be able to go, yeah, I've got that one nailed. I know how, when I'm thinking about me as a leader, being an authentic and effective leader, I know what I need to be thinking about in order to really fully embody that. So let's dive in a little bit further. So I'm going to skip that. So here we go. So when it comes to you as a leader, the 3 priorities are self-awareness, courage, and relationship skills. So let me just break that down a little bit more for you. So self-awareness, if I want to become a really authentic and effective leader, taking responsibility for myself is where I start. And in order to be able to do that, I've got to be willing to look at myself in the mirror. And I mean, like, really honestly and truthfully look at myself in the mirror. So self-awareness, that also includes being open to receiving feedback from other people. In fact, encouraging you to go and get that feedback from the people that you work with, the people that you work alongside, clients. You really want to know what impact are you having, because sometimes, quite often, there's a disparity between how we think we're coming across and how we're actually being received. And what we want to know is that we're coming across in a way that we want to come across and that our intentions are clear. So self-awareness is key. Now, in order to do really good, deep and meaningful self-awareness, we have to have courage. We've got to be brave. We've got to be willing to sit with our vulnerability. There's loads of stuff to talk about in this topic, and I'm not going to deep dive because I just want to introduce you to the framework at this stage. And then the final one is relationships. So I've got enough awareness of myself, and I'm working on what's great about me and where do I get triggered and pulled or caught up sometimes. I'm working on those things. I've got the courage. I'm cultivating confidence, courage, self-esteem from a really good and healthy place. I'm willing to be vulnerable. And now I'm thinking about my one-to-one relationship. So who do I become when I'm then in a relationship with someone? What happens if I'm in a relationship with someone and they remind me of someone elsewhere in my life I have a tricky relationship with? Because those things do happen in the workplace. So what are the skills that I need in order to have really healthy, adult and responsible relationships on a one-to-one basis, either in my team, with my peers, maybe even my line manager if I'm not the CEO or the founder, possibly even clients. So this is very much, how do I take responsibility for me? So then we move around and we start to think about teams. We're like, okay, I've resourced myself well. Now, how does that translate when I'm thinking about groups? And I love groups. So there's so much juicy stuff in group psychology. It's really interesting. So the 3 priorities when it comes to me in teams are belonging, which I'll say more about in a moment, performance, and collaboration. So let's start with performance. So if I am in charge of a team, or if I am the person that's here most responsibly to lead this team and to support this team to be at its best, I need to understand how to audit the team that I have and figure out if I've got the right ingredients in the recipe and if the conditions are right for baking this cake well. Let's assume it's a cake. So performance is about healthy performance. So how do I learn how to identify I've got the right ingredients in the place, be able to put my radar on and spot when performance gets stuck, and also then work with my team in a way that enables them to figure out how we get out of the unstuckness, having an eye on the kind of things I could be putting in place to support them to be able to do that. And to do that in a really healthy way that's future fit is not you taking charge, it's you working with your people. Now, the key thing here when we're working with groups is we've also got to be mindful in this concept of belonging. So the first priority here, when we're working with teams, we've also got to be mindful of group dynamics. Now, we all have our own personal relationship to who do I become when I'm in a team? What is my team story that I've been on? And belonging here is about creating the conditions. Thinking about it, what I like to say to my clients is like, just have an explore and get curious about it in the same way that you would your customer experience and your client customer journey. So when you're thinking about onboarding a new client, it's from the very first contact all the way through the customer life cycle, right through to the leaving experience. And I say just apply the same thing to employees or people joining your team. So someone joins your team, how do you welcome them? How do you integrate them? How do you help them get up to speed quickly? Once they've joined your team, how do you pay attention to the life cycle that they're in while they're part of your team? And really importantly, and often most likely forgotten by many, is the leaving experience. So that leaving experience is the last mouthful that person will have of your team. And you want that mouthful to be the best mouthful that they've ever had. So that when they leave and wherever they go, whether it's to another team internally, a promotion, another business, that they think of the time when they were with you fondly, because that last experience leaves mark. So it's really, really important to think about that. Now, the third priority, the third aspect of teams. So I've scaffolded, I've assessed, I've audited, I've empowered my team. We're working healthily together. I've really paid attention to the group dynamics and the group psychology that sits within and underneath my team. And this third point is, how do I then support my team to play well with other teams? How do I get my squad and another squad collaborating really well together? One of the things that I see quite a lot with clients when they come to me is that they've identified already that there is silo working, which is very, very common. So usually there's a strong board team, there's a strong management team. All the decisions kind of go up from the individual teams. They get discussed at a board level, and then down pops the bingo ball somewhere else. So one team might have raised a challenge, the board might have worked on it, and then it pops down in another team, and that team's going, oh, where did this ball come from? And the original team are going, where did the ball go? So really thinking about inter-team collaboration and how do you break down those silos, empower more decisions to happen below the board. That also frees up the board to be doing the job that they should be doing, which is thinking about the future that's coming and preparing the business for that. So they are the three priorities for empowered teams. So we've got belonging, which is about group psychology. We've got creating a healthy performance. How do you create the healthy performance, healthy being key? And then how do I support my team my squad to work really well with other squads? So that's me as a leader thinking about my team. And so the final area is the all of us space. So we've done the I, the we, and now we move to the all of us, which is organizations. So in organizations, we have three priorities. I don't think any of these are going to come as a surprise to you because they've been around for a long time. But maybe my definition of how we take them to the next level based on the future that's coming might be the thing that makes a difference. So the three priorities we have here are strategy and innovation, culture, and the future. So let's just look at strategy and innovation. For me, strategy and innovation, what I find quite interesting is a lot of clients that I've worked with tend to look 1 year out, if you're lucky 2. And really, strategy and innovation needs to have a 5 to 10 year view, but you will bring it back to a 1 year plan for sure. And how are you going to execute that in the next 1 to 2 years? But if you're not looking beyond the short term, so beyond 1 to 2 years out, how do you know that you are preparing your business to be future resilient, long beyond responding to the short-term needs of the business and those operational pressures? You want to be thinking about what's the future that's coming that's going to affect our sector, our industry, our people, the resources that we have available to us, how we work within our sector in terms of collaboration potentially, or creating a bigger movement. Those bigger questions, 5 years, 10 years out, are we currently organising ourselves in a way that will help us take steps to prepare the business and the people within it to be ready for those things as and when they come, or goals and ambitions and dreams that the business has that it wants to achieve? So innovation is the key thing here as well. I think that there's often kind of two ways of this. I tend to come across the kind of organization that is very responsive, operational in the moment. It's identified what a good year looks like, and it's just responding and adapting to that. So there's quite a lot of pivot and adapting going on, but the lens is kind of in a short-term, smaller world focus. You then have, on the flip side, an organization that has done a bit of future thinking, maybe beyond a couple of years, put a plan in place, and then is adamantly following that plan without any kind of like pivot, wiggle, or adaptation. And obviously we want to have the best of both worlds. So really thinking about your company's theory of change. If you haven't got one, I would highly recommend that you have a think about that. What is your company's theory of change, your relationship to change, and what is your company's approach to navigating change? If you can do that, especially if you can do that from a relational, people first approach, and I can help you with that. If you do it from that approach, you can tackle the what and the how. It is paying attention to the who, and the process enables you to then be more innovative in the moment with way less drama. So that's strategy and innovation. Culture is a hot topic and is not going anywhere, and will continue to be a hot topic, not least because the younger generations coming into our workforces are demanding something different. And we're also in an evolved state of play in terms of what we know we need, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, from workplaces in order for us to do our best work. And we're starting to see more and more diversity within this topic, this area. And so how do I, as a leader, what's my contribution towards supporting that? I like to think of it as an ecosystem, and as you know, environmentally, ecosystems, they evolve and they adapt, and they're much more amorphous than a kind of static culture. So yes, vision and values, they matter, but actually what matters more is the aliveness of your ecosystem and how you pay attention to that so that it works for all people. And then perhaps the most crucial, particularly in the context of the lens that I'm bringing this to you about, is the future. So if you are not thinking about the future, and I've already said this, if you're not thinking about the future, how on earth can you prepare your organization to put the right scaffolding around it, to put the right kind of weatherproofing around it, to put the right cooling conditions inside it? Like how do you even know what your business is going to need, and how you might need to reorganize yourself in order to keep going into the future that's coming? So that future picture thinking, that future vision thinking. And what I advocate for is that you get everybody in your organization involved in that storytelling process, that you start to pull together some futurologists, some information, some data. You start looking out, you put a bit of dreaming and visioning in there, but you get everybody involved. When you get everybody involved, when you get everybody in the business involved, they are more likely to give you at least 100%, if not 110% in terms of effort and commitment. If you do it in isolation as a board and then tell everybody else what you've decided, you're most likely to get 70, 80% max in terms of productivity. If I've had a say in something, I will feel like a little bit of me is already involved in the decision that's been made, and therefore I am more committed to making sure it gets seen through. So there you have it, a very whistle-stop tour of the Frankly Leader Framework. So just to recap, if you want to cultivate an organization that thrives, there are 3 priorities that you need to be thinking about at a board level. That is attracting and retaining the best talent, understanding how to create healthy performance through healthy profits, and being clear about a legacy beyond profit. So making sure that you've got your eye on the impact you can contribute as well as while you make money. Now, in order to do that from a leadership perspective, when you're thinking about what do our leaders need, it's how do we resource leaders to become authentic and effective as individual leaders? How do we give them the tools and resources so that they can lead teams really well? Because it's really important that your teams are working together effectively. And then finally, what's a contribution that our leadership community can make into us becoming an even more purposeful organisation than we are today? And the 9 priorities that go with that. So I hope that's just given you a flavour of the framework and maybe even got you starting to think about, where are my strengths, where is my organisation's strengths, where do we give energy and time to explore in terms of these 9 hot topics, and where are we not thinking about things at all. If I can help with any of those things, you know how to get in touch. Just hit the button, make a comment below, or message me directly. Love to have a conversation with you. And if you want to go deeper into this model, feel free to check out my LinkedIn profile and make sure that you sign up to get my webinar details. I run them every month, and every other month we always talk about the framework. So hopefully see you there at some point.